Soft Light and Hellfire. Pauline Kael's review of High Season, published April 4th, 1988. The melting beauty of Claire Peplow's High Season has a lot to do with a great cinematographer, Chris Menges, and a great setting, a town on the Greek island of Rhodes. There's bliss in the soft light and the Acropolis on its hilltop and the color of the sea. But the film's seductiveness has even more to do with Peplow's knowing how to frame the shots and then edit them so that the images move just a little faster than you expect. She's always a nuance ahead of you, her wit rippling over the story of the 9 principal characters, some of them English, some of them Greek, and one Greek-American. The script, which she wrote with her brother Mark, is a comedy about the type of colonization of undeveloped areas known as tourism. Vacationers from prosperous countries taking over the most spectacular scenery at the most desirable times of the year. High Season is a high-style art house comedy, elegantly calibrated like the French-Canadian decline of the American Empire, but giddier and with more bravura. Jacqueline Bisset has the pivotal role. She's Catherine, an English photographer who, with her sculptor husband, Patrick, played by James Fox, came to live in the coastal town long before the tourists discovered it. Their 13-year-old daughter, Chloe, played by Ruby Baker, has grown up here, and even though Catherine and Patrick have separated, they have both stayed on. He supporting himself by turning out fashionably modern pieces that she thinks contemptible, and she publishing books of photographs featuring Greek antiquities and peasant life, photographs that he regards as fuddy-duddy endeavors. Her latest book isn't selling, and she's broke. She's going to have to give up her house and leave this island she loves unless she can get a buyer for a vase that was given to her many years earlier by a famous, now elderly art historian, Basil Sharp, played by Sebastian Shaw, a dear friend who adores her and who arrives for a visit. Jacqueline Bisset has generally and justly been remarked on more for her lusciousness than for her acting talent, but this is her juiciest performance. Her Catherine is a warm, breathing object of art. Of course, old Sharpie would adore her. The audience does too, especially when she's in the moonlit water, tipsy and confused who the young man is that she's making love with. Sharpie appears to be in his early 70s, but Sebastian Shaw was born in 1905. He was a handsome leading man in British films of the 30s and 40s. More recently, he played the dying Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi. And he's still handsome. His face opens to the sunlight and the camera. He's a scenic wonder, like Bisset and like Irene Pappas, who plays Catherine's widowed friend, tough, weather-beaten Penelope. She's as much a part of the magnificence of the island as the honking donkeys. Penelope, who mythologizes everything, talks about her long-dead husband as if he were the Colossus of Rhodes. She regards the tourists as enemies, as an army of occupation, like the Nazis, and she's engaged in a constant battle with her son, Yanni, played by Paris Celeos, who doesn't mind smiling for the enemies. He wants the prosperity they bring. This is one of those happy occasions when the strong-voiced Pappas, who has embodied so many of the tragic heroines of Greek mythology, gets a chance to play comedy, and she exalts in it. Her deeply goofy Penelope is like Katina Paxinou stood on her head. The whole movie is superbly cast. The wizardly young Kenneth Branagh plays Rick, the practical-minded Englishman who fixes Catherine's toilet so that it finally flushes with a real whoosh, a service that gives her such whole-souled delight that she begins to kiss him passionately. Rick responds like a Shakespearean fool. He's instantly, ludicrously smitten. Meanwhile, Rick's wife, Carol, played by Leslie Manville, who is a romantic and has just discovered Byron's poetry, keeps herself occupied with the tourist-loving Yanni. The group is completed by Robert Stevens as Konstantinis, an obscenely rich Greek-American who's eager to buy Catherine's vase, but needs Sharpie to declare it a fake so that he can take it out of the country. Movies about artists generally turn awed and over-admiring, and when there's talk about art, it can be archly inside and gossipy. High Season doesn't fall into these standard traps, probably because Catherine and Patrick are mediocre artists. Each recognizes the other's deficiencies. That's why they can't live together. But they appreciate beauty. They love the island and respect the Greeks and their customs. Is High Season saying that Catherine is spiritually different from the tourists, a flashy breed who want the undeveloped area to offer them the comforts and entertainments they're used to, and who will inevitably change the way the villagers live? Yes, she's different. The movie centers on her efforts to sell the vase so she can go on living in this place as it is. Patrick puts her down for her conventionality as a photographer, but the movie doesn't. It adores her for the passion of her surrender to the island. At the same time, the director recognizes that the spoiler tourists help to keep the islanders alive. High Season has a nifty and ingenious plot, but what makes it so satisfying is its empathy with expatriate life. Catherine and Patrick don't have to be great artists to justify living on a Greek island. There's a generosity of spirit in this movie. You feel it in the way each character is treated, and there's enough irony mixed in with the generosity to keep everything buoyant. This is more than an accomplished first feature. It has some of the yumminess of a picture like Shampoo. For example, in the scene where Catherine goes to Patrick's place, wakes him up, and asks if he loves her, while ignoring the girl tourist lying next to him. And it has easygoing visual jokes, like the way the camera pans from left to right during the opening titles and then back. Once the movie gets going, it never leaves the island. And there's a joke about the future being behind you. Catherine's daughter, Chloe, cites an illustration when you're standing the wrong way on an escalator. And at the end, the movie shows Sharpie going backward into the future. Claire Peploe had previously made only the half-hour short Couples and Robbers, but she has been working on, and living movies for a couple of decades. She was one of the screenwriters on Antonioni's Zabriskie Point, 1970, and was one of the writers and an assistant director as well on Bertolucci's Luna, 1979. She's married to Bertolucci, and her brother Mark, who wrote The Passenger for Antonioni and has collaborated with about a dozen directors, also wrote, with Bertolucci, the script of The Last Emperor. This debut film isn't major or innovative, and it has rough spots. Patrick's sculpture is perhaps cruddier than necessary, and there's not too well-informed speech about communists in the 30s as the only ones who organized against the Nazis, but it has a lovely equilibrium. Goats and dogs and donkeys move in and out of the frame. In one scene, Penelope sits under a tree looking at Catherine's book, and a goat trots into the background. You want to applaud. That wandering goat represents what Penelope wants to preserve. It's the free spirit of the place. And this first-time director has had the wit to use random donkey honks on the soundtrack as an ancient form of aleatory music. Thank you for listening.